My name's David Eggins. I work for a small charity, a very small charity, Temper Domestic Violence. We deliver work for domestic abusers, both men and women, in mixed gender, therapeutically informed groups. It is work my colleague Mrs. Knowles and I have been doing for 25 years. More than 1,000 men and more than 100 women have completed the 36 hours of our work 100%. From that, you can take it that we are 100% committed to helping to stop violence to women and girls, but we also have to consider that the whole domestic violence scene is pernicious to the lives of children. Both a child's parents matter to each child, and that is why both parents merit our best attention. And of course, the whole domestic violence agenda needs to be based on accuracy. Perhaps I should start by saying that 95% plus of men and 97% plus of women are never ever violent with their partner, their spouse, current or former. When I started this work in 1994, Miss Sandra Hawley, CEO of Refuge, claimed 2 women a week were killed on average by their partner or ex-partner. In 1994, we took that, on average, to be true. It was more or less correct. Her other war cry of that time was, "Count the bodies." Time moves on, so let's now count the bodies. Miss Hawley's charity, Refuge, continues with the 2 women per week figure to this day, minus the on average. The figure implies 104 women a year are so killed. However, ONS, the Office of National Statistics data, shows us that the figure for 2018 was 63 women killed, just over 1 per week on average. Obviously, any murder is 1 too many, but there are other figures missing, and this particular misrepresentation is only part of a much wider picture of domestic violence, which needs to be understood for the sake of the children involved. Why do I quote Miss Hawley? Well, she introduced me to the whole subject, and it sounds as if she needs updating. That figure of 63 women per year is also the lowest figure on record. Miss Hawley could now take, or at least share, credit for those reductions. But of course, that does not sell beds in refuges to the government. Refuge and Miss Hawley have an enormous thirst for money. The charity is recorded as having an income of 15 million plus in 2019. The CEO's income has increased year on year from 2018, 210 to 220,000 pounds to 2019, 210 to 240,000 pounds. So although there is although the agenda is the prevention of violence to women and girls, VWAG is the umbrella on which most of the efforts against domestic violence are targeted, it is, I believe, almost impossible to separate the number of deaths of boys and girls, children. But if the target is the prevention of violence against women and girls, would I not expect to see the number of girls killed too? So we have to settle for the number of children killed, which turns out to be about 65, rather more than the number of women currently. But of course, there are many fewer children, 0 to 18, than there are women, about 26 million of the latter and 13 million of the former. So if we took a rough and ready average, ironing out the 63 and 65 deaths, a child is virtually twice as much at risk of death as a woman. And whilst we are counting bodies, the men killed, probably fathers, were 13. About 20 million women in the UK live with a male partner. The chances of a woman being killed by her male partner or former partner are pretty much 3 in a million, rather slightly less. In generations gone by, the question was, will you marry me? It implied very strongly that the man asked the question and the woman had the choice. Very many relationships will still work in that traditional way, but in this respect, as a rather old geezer, I'm not at all sure how a significant proportion of relationships start now, but I can imagine there is still a significant element of choice. In the UK, the average marriage lasts for just over 11 years, and the average relationship lasts for about 3 years. Other choices which lead to female deaths per year are roughly as follows. Drugs kill about 47 women per million per year. Alcohol kills about 76 women per million per year. Cigarettes kill about 590 women per million per year, according to ASH statistics. Road traffic accident deaths kill about 70 women per million per year. Intimate partners kill about 3 per million per year. So, of some of the choices women make, smoking is the riskiest, alcohol is twice as risky as taking drugs, and taking drugs is 15 times more risky than taking a man. Marriage is about 2 to 3 times safer than a relationship, with the average length of marriage being over 11 years and the average length of an intimate relationship being about 3 years. It's been well recognized for a long time that separation is very much the most dangerous time, as Johnson's figures will illustrate later. Miss Hawley's charity Refuge estimates other related deaths. So around 1,200 females take their own lives each year, and about 10% of those female suicides are related to domestic abuse, according to Refuge. The stresses are caused over custody of the children, or perhaps the shame of appearing in court on charges of violence. About 4,000 men take their own lives each year too. If we applied those same statistics to the men, this would suggest 120 women and 400 men take their own lives because of domestic violence. That would make the total deaths per year for women to be 63 plus 120, 183, and for men to be 13 plus 400, so 413. Another way of framing that could be that 8 men a week, mainly fathers, die as a consequence of domestic abuse in their relationship. But even that focus distracts us from the far bigger issue, child deaths. Statistics suggest 6.9 per million children under the age of 18 are killed by their parents. In the learning from the serious case reviews in a 2017, report entitled Learning from Kafka's Submissions to Serious Case Reviews, which examined 97 cases, all with evidence contributed by Kafka's. The key findings were mothers and fathers were suspected perpetrators of a similar number of incidents of child homicide. Domestic abuse allegations were made in 71% of cases, nearly all against men, or included men, usually fathers. Of those cases where domestic abuse allegations had been made, only in about half of the cases was the suspected killer or harmer of the child the alleged DV perpetrator. The concentration on the alleged risk posed by the father or male partner distracted from a greater risk posed by the mother. Kafkas were supposed to have learned lessons from that, but no, from what we hear, the learning has been very patchy. The stereotypes, the all good mother and the all bad father, persist and are still relentlessly bolstered by an industry which follows a prevention of violence to women and girls and relentlessly trains medical services, social services, Kafkas and the police in that direction, and fails to seek to correct the stereotypes of the all good mother and the all bad father, or even seek to correct the incorrect information. So have the lessons been learned from what we hear time and again? The answer appears to be no. Very nearly 60% of all domestic violence is bidirectional, both men and women involved. Unidirectional violence, female to male, is twice as common as unidirectional violence, male to female. The research was put together by Jennifer Langhinriksen-Roling in about 2012. Intimate terrorists, for which we could understand power and controllers, are 7 men per 1,000 prior to separation and 5 women per 1,000 prior to separation, according to Professor Johnson's figures of approximately 2002. Post-separation, those figures rise astronomically to 22.7% of men becoming power and controllers and 4.7% of women becoming power and controllers. From what we hear time and time again, the answer appears to be, about 95% of parents manage to separate fairly amicably. When prevented from having contact with their child or children, the emotions of sadness and grief and loss kick in, just as if the child or children had been killed by a stranger. Separated parents are encouraged to fight for or over custody. Fighting brings about many recriminations. The losing side of the conflict means that the child loses contact with his or her mother, or more likely father, and also very often with all the other side of the family, cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, and also not infrequently the other person's, other parent's culture. That is a very high price for innocent children or child to pay. Early intervention would help reduce a great deal of this misery to all parties, but not if you separate the couples first. Thank you for listening to this, and I hope that you've been able to draw some useful information and some conclusions from it. Thank you very much, and goodbye.